For two members who've just disappeared to the toilets there, we are a quorum, so I will start the meeting. And welcome to Strong Communities meeting 12th of March 2015. And welcome to members of the public who may be watching us live streaming. And welcome to officers, and we do have Wales Audit officers with us today. And I notice we may have members of the public maybe joining us at some stage. May I introduce the officers at the front here, which will be introducing the Draft People Organisation Development Strategy. I'll start with, on my left, we have Mrs. Kelly Byrne.
Yeah, Ms. Kelly Byrne.
Miss? Oh,
Chief
right.
Officer Enterprise. Thank you, Chairman.
Lisa Knight-Davis, Organisational Development.
John McConaughey, Training.
Thank you, and welcome to the meeting. Okay. Could I have members introduce yourselves, please, from my left there, please?
Councillor Val Smith, Llanbadder Court.
Councillor David Davey, St King's Mark Ward, Chepstow.
County Councillor Ruth Edwards, elect member for Llantilio Cresceni.
Thank you. And I'm Councillor Howarth, representing Gilwyn, Llanelli and Clydach, Chairman of Strong Communities. And we also have the Democratic Service.
Hazel Eilert, Scrutiny.
Richard Williams, Democratic Services Officer.
Okay, thank you everyone for that. Right, let's get straight into the agenda. Part A, Scrutiny of Crime and Disorder Matters. As discussed in pre-meeting, we will look at a document supplied to us by the Fire Authority in the near future, and we'll use that document as a course of exploratory for later dates when the major documents will be made available. Okay, is everybody happy with that? Yeah. Okay, yes. Right, Part B, Strong Communities Select Committee Agenda. Number 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillors White and Sarah Jones.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest, members, as and when?
As and when, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3, public open forum. No, we have no members of the public with us this morning. Agenda item number 4, to confirm and sign the minutes of Strong Communities meeting held on the 18th September 2014. Do I have a seconder and a proposal and a seconder, please, that they're a true and accurate record of that meeting?
Proposed, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Val. Okay. Can I just say now, I do have a letter which was given to me yesterday, delivered to my home address, and members have had a copy of that letter. Some haven't, some haven't. Kevin, did you have a copy of the letter? Yes. Okay. Val, have you had a copy?
I haven't got it with me, Chair.
Okay, can we just... You haven't got yours. David, do you have a letter?
I've had it, Chairman. I have it here and I can pass it to Val.
Can you just make sure members have a letter? Okay. Val, do you have a letter?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's okay.
Could the scrutiny officer just read the letter out, and then I just want direction from members of where we go with response, please.
Dear Mr Howarth, I've recently learnt of the existence of your committee and have read the terms of reference with some interest. Under the remit of your committee, I gather that you have a duty to be responsive to the needs of residents and to support the resilience of existing communities, along with scrutinising key services provided to local communities. I mention the above merely to put into context my following comments, and not in the least to try to tell you to do your job. I would be most grateful if you would study in some detail a planning application and the substantial number of objections lodged by local residents. Since your committee has Strong Communities in its brief, I believe that you have a role to play in helping to sustain and support such a community. May I ask that you take note of the fact that the NRA have objected to the development. The NHS Wales have objected to a McDonald's in the vicinity of a secondary school on health grounds. The existing air pollution, even before any addition, is in excess of the recommended maximum levels. Car parking within the development is already regarded as totally inadequate. And finally, that it does not feature in the MCC local development plan. Much time was spent by your officers and their team drawing up the LDP and subsequently justifying it to Welsh Assembly. In fact, the proposed development does not appear by accident but by design. Please do not be hoodwinked hoodwinked into thinking that it'll bring 147 much needed jobs to Monmouth, as has been suggested by the developers. Firstly, those jobs are mostly 0 hours contracts, which are not anywhere near the full-time employment. And secondly, they would be taking away jobs from town centres and therefore of little benefit overall. Additionally, it has been suggested that the development would take jobs away from the Agincourt School, which is nearby. I do not for one moment think this is an issue for the Planning Committee alone, but feel that your Strong Community Select Committee has a significant role to play in supporting and defending the community of Monmouth against totally unnecessary development. I look forward to your comments. Chair, I would guide you to accept the letter here today, to not discuss it in detail because there are several members on this committee that are on the Planning Committee, and perhaps to deal with this matter outside of the meeting.
Okay, are members happy for me to just respond to Mr. Matthews and explain to him that in due course an officer will respond in writing to him? Are you okay with that?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
I'll just ask one thing. It just jogged my mind, the word existence of our committee. You obviously wasn't aware. And I became aware, I represent 2 community councils within my ward. Can I please have lists of all the council meetings that are open to the public that they can come make their comments to? Yeah, we've always said that we would welcome the public. We've got that space there. The more input, the more we work with our communities, the better. As I say, aware that Llanbedr and Gwelog certainly weren't aware of strong communities, economic development. So please, could that be done? Just went through my mind then, and do it while I think about it, Val.
Okay, Val, we'll have a discussion of how we can engage a little differently with members of the public and town and community councils. I'm sure they are well aware that we are an open public forum for most of our, well, for all of our meetings. But I'll have a chat with the comms team, perhaps through the clerking, and we'll see whether we can look at a different direction. David?
I'd welcome that list as well, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Right, good morning to the team at the front there who've brought together the draft People and Organisation Development Strategy. Would you like to take us through that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Thank you very much for having us back here today to discuss the update on the draft People and Organisational Development Strategy. Now, at the tail end of last year, we first brought the draft strategy to you prior to it being endorsed by Cabinet. And I think it really engaged members because obviously it's such a relevant and timely strategy, especially in terms of the times that we face as a public sector with lots of changes to the policy environment, obviously ongoing financial constraint and the prospect of local government reform. And I think we had a really good and wide-ranging debate. I think there were lots of questions. I think in particular members, you were really interested in training and development, which is why John is here today to talk you through that and to actually give you a live demonstration. But at the time, if you recall, members, we were about to undertake a staff conference, and you asked that we provide some timely feedback on that, which is what today is about. But you were aware as well that we were just about to start the undertaking of an all-staff survey. And obviously, as 2 key components, they will inform and help shape the final strategy that we hope to present to Council over the next couple of months. And of course, you wanted the opportunity to comment on that, to see some of the feedback, to look at the information, the evidence and the data, and to really understand that full picture before we take the strategy back through the decision-making frameworks. So what we're going to do today is to really take you through that, take you through some detail on the staff conference, the staff survey, give you some rich and very colourful examples so you can understand the depth of the work that we're undertaking. And Lisa is going to help us with that. John is, as I say, going to give us a demonstration of some of the training stuff that you asked about last time, because I think it goes to the heart of that developmental message that we were very keen to convey last time. So I've got a presentation. It's about 20 slides long, but a lot of it is data. So bear with us as we talk you through it. But I hope you get lots out of this morning, and I think it will make the strategy all the better when we take it back through the decision-making process. So I'll take us through it, and as I say, I think we'll try and stop to have some discussion points, because I'm sure, members, that some of the data that we're going to present this morning will be quite interesting to you. So, Chairman, if it's okay with you, perhaps we can have discussion as we did last time, because I'm sure there are points that we will want to address in some further detail.
As we go through it then, yes?
Yes, if that's okay with you. Thank you. Okay, so as I say, you know, the people strategy is still very much in its draft form. And when we spoke to you at the end of last year, I think you agreed that it does really need to be in draft whilst we do some of the engagement work and while we get the feedback that we really need to feed into the final document. Because as I say, this is so pivotal and so central to what we do as an organisation, because we can only really drive continual improvement through our people. And I think that was a central message that we sought to convey last time around. So you know already that the people strategy isn't new. You know, we've had a people strategy for some time. The last one was published back in 2012. But this time we wanted to make sure that we had that long period of deep engagement so that we know what we're producing and the learning strategy for the organisation is right for the time. You know, it has to be relevant, because as we've all discussed on many occasions, times are changing. So we can't just have a strategy that's right for today. It's got to be right for tomorrow as well. So we have built the strategy, of course, the draft that you've seen, on lots of evidence, on information, on data, on evaluation, on feedback. But what we want to try and do is to keep that as flexible and dynamic and adaptable as possible, so we can always be updating it. So it's very much a living strategy to take into account emerging needs and priorities. And just really to reiterate, you know, again, why we're doing it. You know, we've spoken, haven't we, on many occasions about our purpose as a council to create sustainable and resilient communities. And it's not enough just for us to connect people to that purpose. It has to be about driving improvements towards achieving that purpose as well. And that really goes to the heart of this people strategy. So the story so far, well, I've just given you some context in terms of the production timescale and the last draft that you saw. But in between, we have had the staff conference, which as members, I know you were very interested to hear about last time. So we had about 1,300 people attend the staff conference, which we held at Caldecott Castle in Country Park on the 6th of November last year. And as I say, you know, quite a significant turnout, really. I mean, that's probably over 25% of our total organisation, which is no mean feat. And obviously there were some logistical issues, but we did get everybody into that tent in Caldecott Castle for that big conversation, which, as I say, builds on lots of stuff we were already doing, but it was quite seminal and important. And a great opportunity, really, for people to hear from the Chief Executive, from the leader of the council, to speak to the senior leadership team, to get answers to some of their burning questions. But it wasn't just one way, it was very much two-way, and it was about us understanding needs, priorities, questions, people having that opportunity to have their say in a format that really suited them and their needs. And what we try to do, because it's really hard, isn't it, when you've got 600 people in a tent at a time across 2 or 3 sessions, to get the staff to really engage and put their perspectives forward, what we did was say, okay, have some post-it notes and tell us 3 things about the council. Tell us something good, you know, tell us something you like about working for the council. Tell us something that's hard, you know, a bit difficult about working for the council. And tell us something interesting. You know, tell us something that really motivates you about why you do your job. And that was the kind of format that we used. So, you know, everyone responded, you know, people were really engaged in that kind of exercise, and people very much reflected on, you know, teamwork and the positive attitude, you know, a feeling of pride in working for Monmouthshire. You know, the flexible nature of how we work was quite important, I think, for people. You know, staff really genuinely wanting to make a difference. I think that came across really, really strongly. And a willingness to do things differently in order to fight for those frontline services. And I think that was something that we heard universally across those 3 sessions on the day. You know, something hard. Well, of course, you know, in this climate, you know, financial pressures were highlighted quite significantly. You know, increasing expectations as budgets are declining. You know, the need for clarity, you know, the need for us all to be connected to purpose and understand where we fit. And obviously, you know, that isn't always the case. And that's something we've clearly got to work very hard at. You know, people needing to feel valued, you know, not just as a service, but as individuals. You know, that was something else that was reflected. And again, a concern, you know, have we really moved away from silos? You know, is it still happening in some areas? Some people felt not, and some people felt that it was. So again, something we really needed to take on board. And something interesting, you know, people felt that diversity, you know, as a council, we provide, over 600 different functions and services, which is quite immense, isn't it, when you think about it, and truly unique. Engaging with communities, people really loved and wanted to talk about that aspect of their role. And, you know, again, this kind of drive for creativity in order to really push forward improvements in service delivery was something else that people found interesting and engaging about their jobs in Monmouthshire. So what we tried to use the staff conference for as well, and again in a very involving and engaging way, was to try out some of the questions that we then wanted to go on to use for the staff survey, because we did a lot of work in formulating those 12 questions, you know, to make sure that they were ones that people felt that they could really get some value out of, you know, not a standard set of 50-odd questions over 10 pages, something that people felt, you know, that they would respond to. And what we tried to do on the day was just test some of that out. You know, do you think we're asking the right things? What do you think about some of these questions on the day? And again, that proved to be quite an engaging technique. People had to hold up blue cards or pink cards to denote their views and opinions. So you can see from the slide, you know, visually, you know, we had a great idea on the day about people's views and opinions on aspects of the organisation. So we had lots of positive comments about the staff conference. I think people just appreciated the fact that we were doing it. You know, very, very difficult times. We've done lots of public engagement. And I think lots of the staff that we all spoke to said, look, you know, it doesn't matter if some of us don't like the message or we don't agree with cuts, you know, that's immaterial. It's just great that we are talking. That's a very positive thing. So the openness and the honesty, I think, was something that was reflected upon time and time again. So, as I say, very, very positive comments, some neutral observations about things we could have done better or things we could do in the future that might help shape and take the event to the next level. We did have some negative responses, and you know, you have to expect that. You know, I went through the box and people were saying, what a waste of time. And I think you're going to get that, aren't you? Some people are going to say that. 27. And I don't think we should focus on that. You know, we should focus on the meaning, you know, why we did this, why it was important, and what we got out of it. I think one of the things that staff conference enabled us to do as well was to really engage with the people who want to champion the strategy throughout the organisation, you know, within their service areas, make sure that we're getting the reach that we need, make sure that we're getting the levels of engagement and participation. And one of the things that Lisa has been doing over the past 3 months is to establish a peer group and what we've called Monmouthshire Minds, which is 60 members of staff from all across the organisation who are coming together to help shape and inform the strategy. Now, I don't mean that as a written document, you know, what have you got on page 56? I mean the living process of the strategy, what we do day in, day out as an organisation, how we really live and breathe our values. So this peer group has been absolutely instrumental in pushing out the staff survey, in making sure that people really engage with it and take the time to have their views, but also in terms of helping us review our appraisal system, check in, check out, because again, that's not something that can stand still. We want to constantly iterate and make that better and build upon that, and also testing out our new HR beta site. You know, so already they're very active and they are engaging people in our organisation, because obviously we're a small team, but rather than, you know, say we've got to have a big central presence around this, We want it to be truly out there in our organisation. We want people to be engaging with it on a daily basis. So I think, you know, in terms of looking forwards, the Monmouthshire Minds peer group will be really, really important in helping guide progress on this really important front. So the staff survey then is another really important aspect, and that builds upon the conference and the information and evidence that I've just spoken to you about. So we've designed the staff survey based upon that feedback explicitly, making sure that we have the right questions, the right suggestions, and ensuring as well that, you know, staff obviously want to make sure that in contributing to a survey and responding, we're obviously going to be acting upon the results and the feedback that we see. So Lisa has done a tremendous amount of work. We're not just sending a survey out and sticking some in the post and sending it out via email. Lisa is actually spending time within our different locations, within our different service areas, different buildings, you know, speaking to people about the importance of the staff survey, you know, about what it can do, what it might result in, you know, the fact that, yes, you know, we probably are at this critical moment. You know, there's such a lot that's going to happen with local government over the next 5-10 years. You know, it's so important that we take the time to help shape and inform our futures. So the Monmouthshire Minds group as well, they've been out distributing the surveys, talking to people, championing it and the importance of it. And obviously we've made it available in a number of different forms and varieties to ensure that people can access and complete it. And I think at the end of last week, we had about 550 responses, but we've got more coming in every day. I mean, we had a glut last night. So every day that figure is changing. And I think we will achieve a fairly high response rate. So based on the number of responses that we've got so far, we have done some data collation. And the scale that we're looking at here is 1 to 5, okay? So 5 being high and obviously 1 being the lowest. So the first question we've asked is, do you have a clear understanding of what the council is trying to achieve? And again, you know, this really follows on from the staff conference when, you know, I think the vast majority of the people in the room, when we asked this question, were saying, yeah, you know, we're clear about purpose, we're clear about what this council stands for. We did ask some supplementaries, you know, if you're unclear, what would help. Communication is obviously an issue. You know, I think we hear that all of the time, and it's something that I just think we've always got to get better at. We can never stand still around communication. There are always new and better ways that we've just got to keep exploring. Some specifics from schools around email access, feeling more connectivity with the council. Obviously, the follow-up on surveys. People want to see feedback, they want to see action, they want to see ongoing process. And, you know, we've included a couple of comments there. People are saying they have clear understandings, but they're not sure if that's the same across the board, which I suppose is fair enough. So around the corporate values then of openness, teamwork, fairness and flexibility, nearly 3 there. And people, you know, it's really hard, isn't it, you know, to demonstrate and to show really visible examples of openness and fairness, because some of this is quite subjective, I think, isn't it? But obviously, you know, there's a perception that budget cuts are unfair. You know, I think many of us feel that way, don't we? And that perhaps some departments are feeling it more than others. But, you know, that comes down to our priorities, I suppose, as a council. Communication needs to feel more even and consistent. Of course, not everybody has access to the hub and emails, which is why Lisa is going out into different parts of the organisation at the moment to have that frontline presence. You know, sometimes people feel that great work is going on, but they're not really understanding it at the time, and they get to hear about it afterwards. So again, you know, fair comments. Flexibility, most people feel that agile working was a very positive thing. You know, it's given them that ability to be adaptive. Teamwork, I think frontline staff feel there is more teamwork and communication at that level than perhaps there is higher up in the organisation. And as I've said already, you know, this feeling that schools want to feel better connected to the council. So understanding purpose and contribution, again, really high. Feeling valued and listened to, 3.2. Do you feel kept up to date? And again, that links very much back to the communication issues that I've been talking about. Do you feel able to share ideas in work and suggest areas for improvement? Again, quite a high score there. I think, common with all of these, the scores are not low, are they really? I mean, I feel quite positive and encouraged reading some of this. What gets in the way if you can't share ideas? Some of it's a mindset issue, which I'm sure we all understand and appreciate. Some of it is about priorities. Could we do fewer things brilliantly than trying to do lots of different things and not necessarily to the highest standards? Some people felt, it was still hard work to get ideas recognised seriously, which is obviously something that we have to focus on. Can I really influence things? So really, really valuable feedback for us in terms, I think, of guiding the next steps. Tools to do the job. Do you have things that you need to do your job effectively? Again, quite a high score, but something that really stood out for me on this was the issues around IT. It was suggested at the staff conference, I think, in some of the questions and answer sessions, that IT was a big issue. I think that wasn't borne out with some of the survey responses that we received. And in fact, we've separately gone out to the organisation, you may have seen it, with another short survey, a Soccerton survey on IT, to say, right, if it is such an issue, tell us specifically so we can start to address some of these problems. And again, we've had a very low response rate. I looked yesterday and I think we've received less than 100 surveys back. Not something that really tells me that IT is a burning issue. And when I've looked at some of those surveys, some of it is to do with user knowledge. Some of it is to do with, well, I haven't got broadband at home. Well, then it's not really IT that's the issue. So we've got to get underneath these and we've got to find solutions to the problems. But we've got to be careful as well that we don't generalise, because that will lead us down the wrong path as well. Okay, access to training. John, you'll be chuffed with this one. Again, that was quite resounding. People felt they did have access to appropriate and timely training that they were then able to incorporate into their roles and their jobs. The check-in, check-out staff appraisal, well, that's yes, no, but I think that score that you have there is one of the quirks of the data collection, but I'll talk about that in a few minutes' time anyway. And volunteering opportunities, quite okay, it's near 3, but I would have expected a higher response than that. But again, I think as members last time, one of the issues you raised to us, it's no good just making volunteer opportunities available. What support processes and policies do we have in place to enable people to do that? Councillor Williams.
Can you be careful your heel doesn't go in that hole?
That one there?
Yeah, you skimmed it a few times.
Oh, have I? Well,
Thankfully where you're walking up.
Sorry, I've got to keep moving. Yes, so volunteering is clearly something that we want to make sure is supported. Shall I take them off?
You've skimmed it a few times.
I'm lucky. Okay, so what matters to you most then about working for Monmouthshire? And obviously this was very much an open-ended question and a great variety of answers here from, making a difference, which is probably the one that we saw most. Obviously people are talking about being well supported, job satisfaction, job security, salaries, feeling valued, supported and appreciated, feeling part of something quite special. So, of course, we've got some really valuable insights there. But, it's not all brilliant, is it? Because don't forget, we are in very difficult times as an organisation, as a public sector. And lots of people were saying, I'm going to be put at risk of redundancy in the next couple of weeks. So, it's a hard thing for me to answer at this time. And, that's part and parcel of where we're at the moment. But we have to take that into account. So, going back to my message at the beginning then, and the purpose of the people strategy, it's very much about connecting people to those core objectives and goals as a means of driving forward continual improvement. And one of the key mechanisms that we spoke about last time at committee was our new performance management review process, check-in, check-out, something which we designed to ensure all colleagues can understand the contribution they need to make to that core purpose, and how values and behaviours are important really in enabling us to meet that core purpose. Not just skills are important, ability, aptitude, all of those things are important, but we're saying as an organisation we really value behaviours and attitude because we believe that's what enables people to go the extra mile. So, again, really important because Monmouthshire Minds are helping us with that. And we've just been through the first stage of check-in, check-out employee appraisals. And I'll talk to you in a minute about the kinds of levels that we've reached in terms of organisational penetration. But again, the Monmouthshire Minds are working with us to say, why not change that and think about this? And this may make life easier for somebody who's filling this in. So again, it's something that we want to constantly iterate and adapt to make sure it's fit for purpose. So around 84% of our colleagues have had their check-in, check-out appraisal. Some are in train as we speak. So you can see that represented visually with that graph there. So we've still got some to action, which, you know, we're on to. But I think, you know, that's a pretty overwhelming figure in terms of this being something consistently that we're rolling out as a tool right across the organisation. And, you know, really, when we're talking about connecting people to purpose, to drive forward improvement and better performance outcomes, you know, there are so many things that we have to take into account which are part of our culture as an organisation. And okay, this looks very much, you know, like a performance management framework, and it is, you know, of course it is, because, you know, that's how we measure ourselves. But I think it's really important to draw your attention really to the different things that we have going on at the moment that enable us to cover the ground that we need, enable us to really make these strides forward in terms of our performance as an organisation. So I've talked about check-in, check-out, which is obviously really important as our appraisal tool. But, you know, don't forget, all of this stuff as well is embedded in things like my Chief Officer plan, you know, my heads of service business plans or service plans. The fact that my heads of service, that Peter, Deb and Ian, have what we call a head of service challenge. And that's with the cabinet members, that's with the chief executive, that's with other officers. For example, Joy sits in on that as the Section 151 officer. And we really talk through key challenges and objectives. And that process then impacts one-to-ones. Obviously, it feeds into check-in, check-out. It impacts one-to-ones with cabinet members. So, you know, this process is joined up. You know, it's all part of a much bigger picture, which I think enables us to really see the kind of improvements and outcomes that we're achieving as an organisation. So I just want to touch very briefly as I conclude then on sort of the future-proofing element of this, because I think it's something that we spoke about last time. And, you know, workforce planning, do we understand the future needs of our organisation? Do we have any gaps? If so, what are we doing about filling things like gaps in experience? And there's a lot in the people strategy about developing careers, making sure that we broaden and provide opportunities to broaden experience, that we grow our own talent. So, for example, I just talked about my 3 heads of service, which have all been promoted and supported through the organisation. But I suppose another example is you'll be aware that we've lost our head of planning recently. George Ashworth retired. Now, that wasn't a skill that we felt that we had in the organisation. You know, we didn't have a natural successor in many ways, so we went to the market and we've recruited a great head of planning. And Ruth, as chair of planning committee, you've met Mark Hand, a really high calibre individual. So I think we've got our balance right. You know, we are growing our own, but, you know, as needs dictate, we do go out to the market as well. And we've got sufficient evidence and profiling of our workforce that helps us underpin this approach. But I think John will probably talk about it in a few moments' time. You know, it's this ongoing cycle of recruiting, inducting, developing, coaching. It's not just about recruitment and retention as sort of 2 goalposts. It's all of the stages in between as well, I think, that are important to us as an organisation. And I think one of the things, members, you spoke about last time was you were very pleased about our commitment to not touch terms and conditions. Because if we're asking people to go the extra mile and we're saying, okay guys, we need more of you now, more than ever, you know, why would we tamper with their terms and conditions? So I think, you know, again, that's a commitment that we can be very proud of in terms of workforce planning. So I'll just run to the end, John, and then, Chairman, if that's okay with you, if we can just demo the training stuff that we've got on the hub, because I know that's of particular interest to members of the committee. Colleague communications, I know We've spoken many times, haven't we, about keeping colleagues informed and the kind of processes that we have in place for that. And Abigail Barton, our new Communications and Engagement Manager, is doing a tremendous amount of work with Lisa on this. You know, making sure that there is clear lines of communication from us as a senior leadership team, that obviously gets fed down into the organisation, but we get feedback up as well, because it has to be a two-stage process. We've put a lot of blog posts out, stories about our progress with the people strategy, so people can understand the stages that we're at. I know there are plans in place for us as a leadership team to do more site visits, you know, more coffee mornings, more on-site briefings, not necessarily in my service area. Perhaps I'll go out to Raglan Depot one morning, and we all take it in turns to get around and about the organisation. Christmas Jumper Day, and again, you know, this is just one example, but you know, a brilliant thing happened that day. We all turned up in our Christmas jumpers, didn't we? We all had a great laugh, we all had lunch together, and I think it's that kind of informal bonding that, you know, really does make a difference, you know, especially to morale and the way we all feel about our work, the way that we feel that we're connected to our purpose. I think that makes such a difference. Obviously, we've got Red Nose Day tomorrow, and I just think, you know, our willingness as a team to celebrate those things really shows that we care about our organisation and making it better. So we've got plans in place now around volunteering and some of the policies and protocols that we'll be bringing forward over the next couple of months. We spoke last time about some of our systems and data processes and some improvements that we needed to make there, which we've done now. And what we've done as well as a commitment to staff, because they wanted another touch point to talk about the organisation, we've set another date for the next all-staff conference on the 29th of June this year. So just to conclude then, I mean, as I said last time, the people and organisational development strategy is not just about human resources. You know, we don't even call it human resources anymore, we call it people services. And for me, you know, it isn't just about that conventional function, giving HR advice, support, oh, you having a restructure, you know, let's come in and help guide you through that. It's much more about developing people so that they can realise their full potential. And for me, in terms of overseeing enterprise, lots of my services come together to make that contribution. So IT, asset management, the stuff that Will does in terms of performance management, all of those things add to and impact this much bigger picture. And there are lots of examples of that, and I won't go through them all, but if we could just talk about agile working, which I know we like to talk about. But if you think about agile working, okay, it enables us all to be adaptive and it enables us to be flexible. But that really does bring together people services, HR, you know, the right policies, giving people trust, enabling them to work from wherever they need to work. It means we have to have connected environments. We need to have the right IT kit. We need to have the right infrastructure and networks. And what agile working has enabled us to do then is to free up buildings, which has impacted the bottom line, which then correlates with a medium-term financial plan. It's enabled us to get our cost of a workstation down, which impacts our performance frameworks. So you'll see that the people strategy brings together all of these enabling functions in quite a compelling way. So I think that's something really important for us to keep in mind.
Can we start to...
That's it from me, yeah. I mean, you can see it's a process of continual feedback. We spoke about this last time. All of this stuff is constantly going on in the background. So as the strategy goes forward now, members, to Cabinet, I anticipate that we'll come back to you regularly with updates to tell you where we are and what the next stages are.
May I just bring you back in on that one, because I thought you said at the start it would go to council, and reading the
Did I?
report.
Sorry, I meant
It's
Cabinet.
going to Cabinet.
Sorry,
This
I
won't be
don't know
going
why
to
I
full
said
council, no?
No, it's Cabinet.
Cabinet. May I ask then my next question then before I let the other members come in? Reference to this is draft. Have we more inclusions in this before it goes to Cabinet?
Yes.
Process to come back to us. I'll ask members whether they want to come back to us. How long will we be?
We've got a date scheduled to go back to Cabinet in April, May of this year.
Okay, thanks. Members? Questions? Ruth?
John, want to come and put your thing?
Thank you, Chair. Just one. I mean, we talk about communication, which is usually it's a problem, and that's why the people aren't sorting their problem. Has it ever been thought of, like they do in colleges, having an open day at some sort of stage where the general public could come in to see what the council is about, whether, different days for different parts of the, different departments? Because I think a lot of people, unless they have a particular problem, they don't really think about the council unless their bins are emptied or Johnny's been expelled from school or something. But I think the general public don't really know enough about the council and how it operates. I mean, we ourselves as members don't always know who different officers are, in which department. And I'm just wondering if it would be something for the future to have like an open day. Thank you.
Would anybody like to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll
Kelly?
respond to that, Chairman. Thank you. I think, that's a really good idea, and I think it's certainly something which we could incorporate into the strategy now as we take it forward. I know services like leisure have open days to the public all of the time, and they're obviously trying to recruit new customers, memberships. So there are services that do this, but if you're talking about something collectively as a council, I certainly think that's something that we could explore. We obviously do Monmouthshire Engages, and we've got lots of engagement ongoing through the whole place frameworks, things like community coordination. But in terms of something that brings it all together, then I certainly think that's something that we could consider and would definitely add value.
Could I come back there? Because I think now that we've got a new headquarters here in Usk, which is more accessible as far as the whole county is concerned, but there's still a lot of people who don't know enough about it and what goes on here, actually, in this building, so to speak. Thank you.
Okay, I got Councillor Smith and then Councillor Easton.
Now, follow on from what Ruth has said, the majority of the population in Monmouth don't understand how the council functions. They don't know the structure. Somebody phoned me about an educational issue, and I made reference to the fact there was a cabinet. Oh, well, I thought all members contributed to the decisions. Well, no. We have this structure, 43 elected members. We have a cabinet system, a leader, 8 members who make the decisions. There are scrutiny select committees. There is an abysmal lack of knowledge as to how the system functions. And this was not somebody who was not a pretty clued up lady that I was talking to. So there is a need for that very much, Rachel.
Would you say on that point though, Val, perhaps officers and teams out there actually don't understand how the system works as well? Perhaps that's the direction we're looking at as well?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
That goes back to some years ago, somebody coming to look at my IT and actually explained to them then how the council functioned. So there is a need for that basic training, the structure or explanation to people. In your slides, Kelly, particularly useful, I found one that was probably about 4 from the end. I'd like a copy of that, if I may. I'll show you which one it is. Because that summed up what you'd said, to my mind. But coming back to it, it's communication all the way through. Throughout the council, communication, and a realisation with officers and members that the public are our customers. We are here to serve the public. They're our customers, and sometimes I don't think we treat them as well as we should. But information, communication.
Kelly, could you make sure all the slides are emailed to all members? Yeah. Councillor Easton?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's regarding 3.7b, which is the ICT, yet again. There are indications of the staff that the systems and equipment do not meet their needs. I don't know how many teachers were at the All Conference of 1,300 people, but coming across to me quite strongly from the primary sector is that the IT systems don't provide the needs of the staff in educating the children. The input-output capacity is just not there for it to be all worked at the same time. It doesn't seem to be a concern in the comprehensive sector, but the primary sector doesn't seem to have the capacity on the ICT systems to really complete their work on a daily basis. Was that brought out in that, or have you got an answer to that?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really good point, and I can confirm that teachers and head teachers were in fact at the staff conference. And yes, we recognise it very much as an issue. The head teachers conference, which I think is scheduled for the week after next, we've actually got a session on around IT in schools, and we've got some potential solutions that we're currently taking forward via the digital board, and we'll shortly be bringing a paper to Cabinet for a decision on that to make some investment into that infrastructure, which we recognise is much needed in schools.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. As usual, Cal, very informative, very bright and breezy. One of the things that concerned me was this business of schools not having access to email. I mean, I didn't know that was the case. I mean, when I go back to my days as Chair of Governors in Darren, we always had emails coming through from county because the head teacher at the time used to say, oh, here's another one, what's this? And there seemed to be a constant flow. I don't know what's changed there, but I find that quite concerning. The overall opinion of this, from my point of view, is good stuff, you know, and if you get the answers you don't like, that's probably even better, because that gives you a chance to have a look at it and see what you're going to do. But it strikes me that 98% of the issues and the problems that need fixing are, like Val said, it's about communication. And every man and his dog looks at communicating with the outside world. The businesses say, how do we communicate with our customers? And every single one of them that I've come across so far, including my own organisation that I work in, forgets to look internally. And I think, you know, is there a possibility of a piece of work that could look to developing the internal communication system? I mean, why can't people have access to the hub when they're sitting in the house? If you get a web address and they've got a login that they can look in, you know, I don't see an issue with that. These sort of things need looking at. Is there a piece of work possibly in the pipeline that could come forward that would allow people to have access to these sort of things, to see what's going on? You know, that's just my thoughts on it. Other than that, I think it's pretty good.
May I ask a question, Kelly, in reference to the Williams report and the white paper now, which the Minister put out in January? Is consultation around that also with members of staff? Because it is clinical within that document about reorganisation, and we did say that this is not short-term, this is long-term. Are we doing that consultation with them on that also?
If I can answer all of those, and I'll address Councillor Williams's points as well. I think as regards the Williams review, if I take that one first, I mean, it's still early days, isn't it? I mean, we don't know exactly how that's going to play out. And I think the approach that we've adopted, led by the Chief Executive and the leader, is, you know, let's not panic yet. You know, there's still a lot of water to flow under that bridge. But I know Paul has done several blog posts out into the organisation. There's information on the hub to keep staff informed and up to date. And, you know, we've basically said as things change, we will engage and we will inform you, and we'll have the debate as and when it's required. But at the moment, you know, we're not trying to preempt things. As regards IT in schools, you know, schools do have access to email. You know, of course they do. I think it's just a matter that some schools, primary schools, not secondary, some schools are on our network and some are not. And I think part of the proposals that we're now looking to bring forward for ICT in schools includes migrating them all onto the MCC network. So that's something in train that we have clear plans around. And I think, you know, you're absolutely right about the internal communications. It's always going to be the biggest issue, and it's always going to be the hardest issue, because you can always do more and get better, I think. So I know Abby and Will have been working with Lisa and the guys to put in place what they've called a colleagues communication internal plan, and that does include access to the hub for all, so you can access it at home. We're going to make the hub available externally as well, so anyone can access the key information. And as I say, lots of things, site visits, you know, maybe we are going to look into more regular communication via team meetings. You know, some measures may have to be quite blunt, but just so we can get some key messages across. So it's definitely in train. And the digital champions are part of that as well. You know, they're part of that network, getting the message out. So, you know, as members, if you've any more ideas and suggestions and things that you think can contribute to that, then please say, because, you know, we're always looking for those suggestions.
May I just ask then, going back to the white paper then, are we, as an organisation, on a staff perspective, going to respond to that? Because members will, as a council, we will respond as a corporate response from members. Will staff be engaging in making a response to that white paper, which we went through yesterday?
I think it's a political response for the council.
So staff haven't been engaged in that paper at any time, no?
I think
'Cause it is
staff,
incremental to them.
yeah, I think staff will pick it up and they will engage. And don't forget, some of our officers are involved in regional frameworks and trade bodies and different groups that may respond to the white paper, especially in terms of their thematic areas or their professional areas. But in the first instance, it's right and proper that council respond to that political document. It's a white paper.
Any more questions? David?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a little concerned still about the agile working. Sorry, Chairman. I'm still a little concerned about the agile working and how effective that is. I know a number of us have been, if you like, used to hot desking and the differences there are there. But there, and I know what you said about how it frees up the building, makes it more flexible, but, you know, I've been in here a number of times, and this building is so freed up, you know, I felt like I was on the Marie Celeste, if you like. So I'm not convinced that we've got that balance right yet. And I'm also convinced on occasion that people at home, sometimes when they are agile working from, well, two instances. One where I was trying to speak to an officer, and I know it's different, but it proved to be virtually impossible because of the baby crying and the noise, and she was obviously trying to deal with that. If it had been a member of the public access, and that would have been far less than professional. And the other one was an employee who had got a new dog, and I was, you know, again, trying to get information out about something that was happening in my ward, and I know he was pleased he got a new dog and all that sort of thing, but I didn't want to hear that, and I didn't want to hear the dog banging away. And I think there is some, oh, yeah, okay. I didn't want to hear the dog making that much noise. The point is, I think there is some training that needs to go on with the with agile working and individual officers when they need it. I'm pleased to hear you say that we are growing our own. It's a phrase that I've used in the past, and I believe in it implicitly. It means you don't have to go out and look for people that you might fit into your culture. It means they already come from the culture, and you should get a far better deal. But that really makes me worry about the question too. Do you feel the authority lives and breathes its corporate values of openness? And there was a worry about that. I'm concerned about that. I think that is an issue that we shouldn't pass by lightly. And the other one I was concerned about as well. Do you feel valued and listened to? And there was not a very good, well, it's 50-50. I think that should be better. And I am concerned there about the value, and not only value and being listened to. I am concerned there, and I'd be interested to know if you got some feedback on that, whether the staff got a feeling from some councillors that they weren't being valued. Are we contributing in a negative way to that feeling from the staff? I'd like to know that. I think it's important that we know that, because we should be proud and very supportive of our staff. Excuse me a moment. Well, just check, I haven't, oh yeah. The other one was, do you have everything you need to do your job effectively, equipment, IT policies and procedures? What was the major issue that, what was the major issue there? What, was it across the mosaic of activities, or was it just the fact that there was a particular activity or a suite of activities that was causing problems? I'd like us to drill down a bit on that, and I'd like to know what the issues are. Other than that, I think that yeah, it's welcome, go on your own. Other than that, I think that having the meeting that you did have, I think it's a great idea. I believe that you should have more of them. I also believe that individual officers, this has gone from my past, how I was treated and how I learned to treat my staff, was that there was, if a member of staff did something that was really, it shouldn't be overused, but if a member of staff did something that was really significant, I always had written to me when I did something like that, just a brief letter, a brief note,
Okay,
something
Kevin.
that you could have put on your file, and it was also said, you know, this was brilliantly done, well done, this will be put on your personal file. And I think some of the small tools that you use like that can change a lot of these things away, make staff feel more cuddled, if you like.
Do we have an answer for Councillor Dovey on his first question?
Yeah, I'll be very brief because I know Lisa wants to come in, Chairman, as well, if that's okay. Just on the staff conference, you know, we mustn't forget that that wasn't the only and the first time we've had staff together in that format. You know, we've done that previously. We've done it in different ways. So I know the year before, the chief executive and the leader went out to different venues and to different services and met with over 1,000 staff face to face. And, you know, we're out at all times, aren't we, in our services, in our communities, constantly meeting with people. So it's important as a punctuation point, but don't forget all the other stuff goes on and is ongoing as well. Just, if I can just touch very quickly on agile work, and I mean, obviously, we are going to get examples, aren't we? But, you know, that's going to be the byproduct of building this culture of trust. And I think the facts around agile working are incontrovertible. I mean, if you think about the buildings that we freed up, our savings, you know, which are demonstrable in revenue terms, the capital receipts that we've been able to generate, the high order IT and the networked environments we have now to work in, the feedback we've had from staff groups, the staff surveys around agile work and the feedback we've had from our customers, it's clear that on balance, you know, this is massively beneficial to what we do as an organisation and how we do it. Being connected and close to our customer enables us to deliver on what matters. And I think that's really one of the most important things. Lisa, I know you wanted to pick up on the openness points, didn't you? And about what comes next, and specifically the issues around feeling valued and listened to.
Thank you. The luxury that I'm currently afforded is that when I'm spending time with people with the surveys and the peer group, that I'm hearing that people are feeling valued because we're spending time doing that. So even though perhaps the tick on the box, they've completed their survey and then we're going back and collecting them and they're saying, actually, I feel more valued now that you've taken the time out. Openness and the communication, I think, are really linked. The peer group allows us to meet and talk deeper into the questions, and there's a recognition from the peer group that we can't always be open about everything, but they appreciate the fact that if we're told the hard messages and we're allowed to hear so much, that's absolutely fine, and that contributes to the openness. So I absolutely hear what they're saying, but I think we're on a journey to those both feeling valued and their staff's perception of how open we're being is definitely changing.
Chairman, I'd like to comment on that as well, if I may. In terms of, before I explain what we're doing in terms of training, we've been very, very clear over the last 12 months when we've been developing training for managers, supervisors, in terms of check-in, check-out, and some of the coaching training. How do we, you're absolutely right, values are very subjective, and I think we'd all agree that our values of openness, fairness, flexibility and teamwork, generally, that they are good values. Where we get the most impact from those words is when people have one-to-one conversations where they agree, actually, what does openness mean in this role, in this context? So what will we see you doing out in the community in terms of openness? So we need to actually measure the values via the behaviours that people do. So whether that be teamwork, whether that be flexibility, and it's actually that opportunity to agree, what does flexibility look like in terms of this job role in this part of the community, and what will we see the behaviour? And then we've got really good measures, and they mean something.
Thanks for that. David, there's no supplementary, no?
No, I'm just pleased to hear that you're on the journey. I mean, it is an ongoing process. It's something that's never done. You just got to keep motoring on professionally, so you see.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. Right, do you want to take us through the last bit now?
I need to put the presentation.
Okay.
Just one moment.
Can I ask a question,
Push
Chairman?
Campbell.
I noticed in the report, 3.5, got a temporary volunteer coordinator has been appointed. How are we going to communicate that information? It presumably aimed at groups outside, not staff.
Yeah, it's a very good question, because it's very early doors for Owen, who used to be part of our youth service, Owen Wills, who's now stepped into the role working with Lisa. And Owen's just in the process at the moment, councillor, of meeting the different groups, the different organisations, building his knowledge, building the evidence base, but we'll certainly be in touch with all members, you know, all community groups, community councils, town councils. So as I say, it's very early doors, but there's a very comprehensive plan in place to have that high level of engagement. So, you know, another area where there's lots to talk about, and, you know, hopefully you will meet him and make your contributions known.
Hi, I connected the presentation to the screen. Ah, there it is. Thank you. Could have been a bit embarrassing, really, if I didn't myself have basic IT skills to do a presentation.
120 seconds.
120 seconds, wow. 2 minutes to explain 2 years of development. Oh, I can do
Well, I
that.
might be stretching to
I'm really excited to present to this meeting our rebranded corporate training. In 2 minutes, this is a partnership, internally as well as externally. We've gathered together everybody who's delivering learning and development within Monmouthshire County Council, and we're bringing it under the umbrella of Talent Lab. Something that's really exciting about this is the training needs that we've identified they've come from People Strategy on Tour. They've come from our work of 6 months in children's services, where we work with the front line, where they've told us what they needed to do differently, where they told us what was wrong with the system. So we work together with our IT partners, HR, staff and training to actually transform a whole service. So the initial training courses that are available, if you click on the hub, which again will be externalised very shortly, will show you the type of subjects that people have asked for. What's also really important to me is we're explaining key areas that we've been working on. We've developed our own coaching programme in Monmouthshire. We've trained 205 managers and supervisors in the last 12 months, since February 2014. Now, the coaching model itself is really, really important, because it absolutely gives people the skills and the capabilities to agree with their employees. What are the outcomes that we're working towards? What does that look like? And that really helps the manager and the supervisor identify, so is agile working appropriate in this context? And what does agile working mean? Because to me, agile working means working where the work is, where the customers are. So it's about giving people the absolute clarity of what that outcome is. And I wish I had longer, actually, to talk about this coaching model, because we've had some really good feedback from managers who have attended it. We've actually incorporated a lot of global research, because we know that managers who are trained in coaching generally perform 22% higher than people who manage in a more traditional way. And we don't live in a traditional way anymore. So this is something that's really quite cutting edge, and it's central to our programme. The other thing, as I've still only got 2 minutes, something that's really important for me to explain is, we can't just design the best training even though the training needs have come from all the right places. We need to know that it makes a difference. I've worked in 3 local authorities, and in training, we know that, you know, the holy grail of training is, can you measure that it actually makes a difference? We can do happy sheets. Everybody does those across the country, across the world. We've actually developed our own 4-stage way of measuring the impact, and I will make sure the link's available for this, for people to actually see in more detail. So the first stage of identifying whether you need to deliver any learning is, what is the training need? And what does that mean in terms of behaviour, skills, knowledge? Getting those clear outcomes at the beginning helps you design the learning event, which may not be a training course. It may be the person needs to go and work with somebody who's more experienced. It may be the person can have a book, or it may be the person needs to go and work in a different team to get new experience. We then agree, how are we going to measure that this has done what it's needed to do? So we'll agree some behaviours and future performance that will happen. So we're starting to layer the way that we measure that it makes a difference. Over the last 12 months, we've started designing all of our learning events like this. We started with a prototype from the coaching training. I can already tell you, we haven't got the full data yet, because it hasn't been a full term of measurement, but on average, people were turning up before the coaching training, rating themselves around 4.5, 5 out of 10 in terms of the coaching skills. Now, we asked them to rate themselves after, and that had gone up, obviously. But again, the most important bit, how do we measure whether they're any good at coaching is, we don't ask them. We ask the people that they manage, that they supervise. And on average, people who've attended, the 205 people who've attended, on average, on the ones we've measured, their employees, their team colleagues, are rating them as 8 out of 10. Now, this means 8 out of 10 in terms of clarifying outcomes, in terms of being really good listeners to the frontline workers, in terms of measuring and giving feedback on performance. So people often think coaching's a bit of a soft skill, a bit lovey-dovey, but actually in reality, it's very, very focused on outcomes, listening skills, and being able to measure and give feedback. So I know we went on about that a little bit, but it's important to me.
That was important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I stole one of my questions there, so.
Okay. The other bit is we're launching Talent Lab externally as well, because we can't train everybody in everything. We want access for our teams to the best trainers and educators in the world, if we can. There are some incredible private companies out there who can help us grow our internal talents. Now, we need to be creative in terms of doing that, because we don't have the training budget to just go and fork out lots of money on expensive training anymore. So we are looking to work in partnership with different training companies outside as well, so that we can offer them use of our training facilities, our space. They can advertise training commercially, and they can agree with us how many free places we get for our own teams, so that we're actually effectively getting our training delivered, in some cases, at no cost. But again, we will be measuring it using the same model. So I'm really quite excited about the future for us. I think it's taken us a couple of years to line everything up. We've had a lot of learning to do through working, with whole teams, looking at the whole system, it isn't just about training courses, it's about what's in the way of people delivering what matters. Okay?
Any questions, members? Val?
A question. I'd be interested in sitting in on a coaching session if that was possible, Chairman.
Absolutely.
Chairman, can I just say all members do have access to the hub, so it might be that if you've got time, John can perhaps sit down and explore some of that with you. And I think that, you know, we talked about openness, didn't we, and fairness and some of those values. And we may think we're being open by live streaming meetings, having questions at Cabinet. Nothing goes on pink papers in this authority, and they are all components of openness, but it's how people feel about openness, and I think John has just given a great demonstration of where we're really starting to try and make inroads around those values.
Okay. David?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the first thing I'd like to say, John, your enthusiasm for what you're doing is infectious. I think anybody who listens to you will understand that you are really devoted to this, so you're probably about 75% of the way where you want to go. And the other thing I think is really good that you are taking us outside the box, if you like. There is really, I suggest, there is really not an awful lot we can learn from some of the local authorities that are around us. I believe that we probably lead the field in this area. What I am pleased to hear is that you're prepared to look at where best practice is practiced in areas outside local government, because you can always draw parallels. There are things going on outside in commerce and in industry that have parallels to what goes on here. And we should really grasp the opportunity. And my experience is, if you are interested in what they do, they will be very happy for you to come along and sit in and experience it. It's, again, growing your own. I mean, if you look at the wider picture, we should be growing the expertise in every field that we have in this country. We should be looking for best practice wherever it is.
Okay, thanks,
and more
Dave.
strength to your elbow.
Any more questions, members? No? Okay. Right, we just need to decide now. We've just been informed that this may go to Cabinet in April-May. When is your data due then to finalise your document there? Because you said you haven't done the full 12 months yet, and your data will be so valuable in presenting that to Cabinet.
Absolutely. I think it's really important to recognise that our training plan, it doesn't actually start at the beginning of a financial year and then end. It's been ongoing for a number of years. I will have enough data and an explanation to present alongside the updated report, so that we can, you know, get a really clear picture of where this is making a difference. So there will be data that will state the period of time and the figures that go with that.
So members, we need to decide now. This is the draft document. The final document will go before Cabinet either April or May. Do you want the final document to come before yourselves, or you're willing to take any amendments to that document on top of what we've got here via email or in paper format, and assess them, assess the document then, and pose any questions then at a later date?
Under 311, it's suggesting that, gosh, we're going to become additional consultees. And I'm happy to go with that, Chairman, and pass any comments in.
Okay, Kelly.
Yeah, Chairman, I would say as well, you know, final version of the strategy, and you know, what does final actually mean in this context? Because we're talking, exactly, and I think it's the point that Councillor Dovey has made. It's never done, is it? It's never finished, it's never delivered. It has to be living. And I think if this committee agrees to receive regular updates, that's probably the best way of you being meaningful, genuine consultees.
Yeah, if you're going to Cabinet in April, it can't come back to us. So members, just be if the officers mail out to us any updates on what we've presently got, you'll be happy with that, yes? Okay, thank you. Thank you, team. Yeah, thank you. Rob, can you come down, please? I'm going to move agenda item number 7, is it? which is the public conveniences, to number 6, just swap the agenda around. The officer needs to leave. Pardon? Thanks, Rob. I brought you forward. So. Hi members, this is an update of public conveniences. It's on our work programme, it's been there for some time. We keep asking for updates on this because there are issues keep arising with public conveniences. Rob, can you just take us through the document? Just filling in for Roger, yes.
Yes, Roger's...
You start, Chair. I must declare an interest in parts of this because Calicut Town Council are looking to take over one of the toilets. So just a personal interest, not prejudicial.
I've got to say, Tony, my community council have taken over a toilet, and whether we're mentioning it, I couldn't care less, to be honest with you. So I won't worry about it too much. Rob,
yeah. Well, if that's the case, I think in Chepstow we're negotiating to take over additional ones. So just to make sure that
good luck.
Cleaner than clean, yeah.
Okay, I'll crack on then. Yeah, apologies from Roger. He's in Australia, as you know, so I'm stepping in, and Rob Nancaro's here as well to answer any particular technical questions because he's a bit more operationally clued up than I am myself. But I'll take you through the report. Do you want to deal with questions as we go? Entirely up to you. Yeah. Purpose, nothing really particularly complicated, as you say. The purpose of the report is to inform you what the current state of play is with our public conveniences and seek some feedback and discussion from yourselves with regards what the potential future options may be in the context clearly of doing the right thing in terms of the provision of the service, but also maximising our opportunity to generate efficiency savings to support our mandates wherever possible. The key issues surrounding this particular agenda are, as you know, in 2010, the Strong Community Select Committee undertook a detailed review of the provision of public toilets and came up with some strategy and plans to take it forward. As a consequence of that, several adjustments have been made to the service over the last year, which has generated some efficiency savings. But the majority of public conveniences are still remaining open to the public, and the management and provision varying between towns and villages. Now, Appendix 1, which was attached to your report, details where MCC retains some interest in our toilets and the future provision of the toilets, and those that remain the responsibility and the cost of Monmouthshire County Council at the moment are listed within the body of the report there. In Abergavenny, you've got Whitehorse Lane, Castle Street, Brewery Yard, and the bus station. Monmouth, you've got the Cattle Market, Usk, Maryport Street, Usk, Island, and in Tintern we've got the Abbey car park. Those are the ones that are currently the responsibility of Monmouthshire County Council in terms of the asset and the cost of running the facility.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit ridiculous really calling the one in Monmouth Cattle Market. It hasn't been there for so many years.
No.
Why can't they rename it to Monmouth Bridge Toilets or something like that?
I actually had it down as myself, Blestium Street,
Yeah,
which is probably the more appropriate name for it, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of
So-
people know the name of that street, to be honest. But Cattle Market seems very, very outdated.
We can.
And I'm questioning, why is it costing so much more to clean those two lots of toilets in Monmouth compared to Abergavenny?
I'll come on to that if you like when we look at the schedule in detail, and we'll also rename that for a bit more clarity as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yes, we've got here Chepstow and it's Welsh Bank Street. I'd just like to be clear how we take these over. Do we take them over in good order, or do we take them over as they are? Which,
Yeah.
if you like, with Welsh Street is pretty ghastly. We've got wire hanging off it. It needs painting and whatnot. You know, the whole bit.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's a good point, because clearly if we're looking to encourage alternative management and responsibility for these facilities, people are not really going to be prepared to take them on board unless there's a certain amount of work done. And one of our spreadsheets there, I think it's on Appendix 2, summary analysis of the estimated capital cost requirements to renovate public conveniences, details broad brush figures as to what we think there may be the cost to provide those facilities in a fit-for-purpose state before people take on a revenue cost responsibility. You want to bring something in there, Rob?
If I may, Chair, just an update on that particular situation. Councillor Dove is quite right. If community councils are looking to take on these facilities, then it's incumbent upon the authority, where possible, to make reasonable arrangements to refurbish them. In the case of Bank Street, work is planned to take place now before the 1st of April, so that when it is actually handed over to the Town Council, that work will have been completed. And whilst I don't have the exact figure, we have been able to undertake that work, or we have commissioned that work to be undertaken, will be at a much lesser figure than the original estimate of £10,000.
And I believe the same is the case, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, for Jubilee Way in Caldecott.
Yeah, the work with Jubilee Way is currently being undertaken. That's a more extensive piece of work, and that's reflected by the cost involved there. But again, we've, in working in close cooperation with the Town Council, the intention is that facility will be fully renovated and handed over by the 1st of April.
May I ask, though, during our initial report, when it was take toilets on and close them, that's where we were, wasn't it? With the rural communities, it was take toilets on and close them. It's now is take toilets on and we'll spend a fortune before you take them on. Am I right in saying that?
I think that's an option that is there for discussion. Clearly, I think from the authority's perspective, in terms of the affordability of the revenue and the capital budget, bearing in mind the seriousness of the efficiencies in the capital programme, the ideal scenario would be that community and town councils take those facilities on without any upgrades. From their perspective, clearly not the case, but from the authority's perspective, in terms of minimising the effect on the capital budget, clearly that is something we'd be looking to try and deliver.
Yeah, the reason why I'm just saying that is because I'm looking at the Abergavenny one here. Some of the toilets actually should have no investment at all. They should be flattened, taken away. I can't remember which one it is in Abergavenny, but everybody moans about it. So and I think it was the one we were going to joint work at, and it hasn't worked out. Remember, I think we were going to put a contribution to Town Council. That never materialised. Yeah. But them toilets are appalling. Yeah. They must be DDA compliant still, or we would have closed them.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then you have a business case here, and I'll just take Abergavenny. Yeah. There's a new supermarket. You've got the Aldi's. We could have a McDonald's coming to town centre. Nobody knows there. So when you look at toilet provision with the cafes and all these places, it's actually utter waste of money investing in a toilet block which actually shouldn't be even there.
No, and I totally agree with you. And when we go through the conclusion of the report, some of the recommendations or something that we'd like to discuss further is the fact that, as you rightfully say, some of those facilities we've got are not up to scratch. They take a considerable amount of money to bring up to a fit-for-purpose standard. A good example, clearly at the top of my spreadsheet there, is White Horse Lane. Vast sums of money to... It's simply not worth it. One of those things probably should be flattened or mothballed. Yeah. And we've got facilities throughout the county and within the towns, at supermarkets, within leisure centres, possibly within other facilities in the town, where you can still provide toilet facilities. I think that's probably the tack that we're looking to try and exploit.
But my main point on this is we were told in our rural communities, and there were lots of them, take them on and we close them. Right. And we weren't threatened, it was true. You know, it was a true statement. And there was some closed. People didn't want to take them on. And they didn't take them on, they closed. We took ours on where I come from. And we had the grant, which is great, brilliant. And I think in our report, we had probably the best, in the report Val and members did, we had the best set of toilets in Gilwan and the whole of Monmouthshire. Yeah, I can imagine. What I can't understand is we've still got toilets here from 4 years ago. We're putting lots of money into.
Yeah, in terms of revenue.
Yes.
Yes. And that's why we're here again, I guess, in terms of debating that issue. The fact that they're probably not sustainable in terms of the cost of revenue, running rates, maintenance, and obviously in terms of capital, if we had to bring those toilets up to a standard, whether it be DDA or just pure planned maintenance over the period of the lifespan of those premises. It's not sustainable, and we need to consider alternative ways of doing that.
All right. Sorry,
That's all right. No, and also we've got public houses. We extended opening hours, and so years ago they were shut at a certain time.
Yeah.
But there's loads of those in most areas, even in the countryside. If there's a local pub or something, there are toilets available.
Yeah.
And I think that's an extortionate amount of money in Abergavenny that we really cannot afford.
No.
And going back to the one in Monmouth, when I said about the cattle market. If you said Mono Bridge toilets, if somebody's at the top of the town or whatever, they can see Mono Bridge better than they can see a sign to a lane or a street or whatever.
Yeah.
It's very evident, and the Mono Bridge does attract
Yeah.
a lot of visitors just to see that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what you say about White Horse Lane. It is appalling. I've had several complaints myself from residents in Gyfailen that have said how disgusting it is, and I've forwarded those on as well. However, if you were to take those away down that end of town, where else is it that people could actually go to? Where can you go? Because many pubs and places like that, they say the toilets are for my customers. I know of one pub in Abergavenny where somebody was refused, several months pregnant, to go in there and use their toilets. Where do you suggest these people go? Because for me, it's important that people have access to a toilet down that end of town. Anybody elderly and infirm or slow walking, like myself maybe, because I don't tend to run much.
No.
If you were having to get to the brewery yard or Castle Street, it's a long way to go.
I mean, clearly we're stuck between a rock and a hard place to an extent. We know how important the toilets are for the community. We know how important they are to visitors, tourists in certain places. And in an ideal world, I think we'd be providing a decent amount of facilities across the board. Because of the capital and revenue problem, clearly we've got to look at alternatives. I agree, there's not always a convenient substitute that's jumping out as an obvious choice. And the grant that was previously available, I believe, from Welsh Government for doing up certain facilities and allowing things like pubs to offer up their services for the community in lieu of others being available, I think that's been withdrawn now. So it might be something that we need to consider perhaps as an authority in terms of offering an element of money to certain groups to substitute the much more expensive solution that we may be getting rid of.
David.
Thank you, Chairman. I accept the point you make that there are instances where we'll be between a rock and a hard place. You have to bear in mind that some people don't want to go into a pub. Ladies particularly don't want to wander in looking for a toilet. It can be a bit embarrassing, and indeed there is a hardening of attitudes in the marketplace, if you like, against it. But in Chepstow, we have taken on a number of toilets. The town council has a fair commitment towards the toilets. And bearing in mind that we are seeking, if you like, to maintain the service within the town and be a good partner to the council by taking them on, I do think it is incumbent on the county council to hand the toilets over in something like a reasonable and serviceable manner. I think it would be really inappropriate to hand over something like this that is basically barely usable and expect town councils to come up with money because they're under the same strictures as far as money's available to them to do it,
I think the point I was making, though, is we did the exercise 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Abergavenny, White Horse Toilets, there was an agreement made that the town council and the local authority would work in partnership to bring them toilets up to a good standard. No? Which one was that then, Val?
There wasn't an agreement. Our recommendations came forward. Good toilets are main points of arrival. And we were, in that report, there was no proposal to work in partnership. That was then brought forward by Abergavenny member. And yes, we've now spent £100,000 in the 5 years, really, haven't we? Running a dreadful facility. It reflects appallingly on Monmouth, quite frankly. I think we've got to start thinking differently as to how we do provide the service. I'd like to see toilets everywhere, but it's one of those services we don't have to provide. We are very strapped for cash, and we've got to look at a better way of doing it. Weatherspoons, I believe, they make their toilets available to the public. Yeah, it's a service you would like to see retained and whatever. Before we go into the nitty-gritty of this, Chairman, as to where we're actually going, you know that I've got a particular question as well that I think these gentlemen could answer. If not here, I really want an answer now as to who authorised the sale of the Raglan toilets. I've had the account as to how much the capital receipt was for it. I want to know who gave the authority to sell at that price. So I look forward to receiving that, please. In your listing, gentlemen, the summary analysis of the revenue costs, there isn't one for what I call Woodside, the toilets at Usk, the other alternative toilets. That is actually Woodside in Llanbaddock. So that's on Appendix 1. Unless I've missed it, we've got Maryport Street, Usk. That's the one with the burger bar.
So it's the Woodside, okay, it's
The Woodside.
It's not there, so we need to,
Yes,
explore
please.
that. Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
Woodside, though? That was taken on by the burger bar man, wasn't it? And Lock and...
We've got an innovative arrangement there, I think. It seems to be working very well. We've got a good site now because we've got a lot of work done via a grant for the car park, and it's been, I hope, very satisfactory.
Okay.
But we need the costs because we still do incur a cost for water and such like. But I'd like to know exactly what the arrangement, and the committee should know, the arrangements that were arrived at that site, because we could duplicate. Because going back to when we closed toilets, we actually closed a tolerable block and had the ludicrous situation of a portaloo sitting in front. And I sat in that tatty old car park and watched a member of the public appear there. And it was funny, but it was such a sad reflection of Monmouth. Good facility there now, costing needed, please, Chairman.
Kevin, do you want to come back in?
Yeah. Very quickly, Chair, I'm interested to hear where you say, Councillor Smith-Val, about Weatherspoons. There's no obvious signage or anything that anybody would know that. It tends to be, if you go to the Weatherspoons loo, you tend to sneak in so the camera don't catch you, sort of thing. But if you are going to talk about getting rid of White Horse Lane, you have to do something serious down that end of town, definitely.
I think my point about the Abergavenny one is it's as though we have a set of toilets there which need to be either refurbished, replaced or closed. We seem to be in a bit of a sticky mud with it where nobody will make that decision. And you're quite right, Val, we've probably spent well over £100,000 as an authority on that toilet. Somebody take the bullet and say, right, there's £50,000 on the toilet. Town Council, because I'm sure Town Council finance minutes actually say they were going to invest some money into it, but we as an authority were not. I think the cost went up, something like that, something happened. And we need to actually make that decision, either get them refurbished with the partners or close them. Because we can't keep throwing money at them.
No, and I think that's exactly why we're here, really, is to try and instigate that level of much more detailed action.
Because again, if you look at the White Horse ones, that's quite a big site. That's got a capital receipt
potential.
And also, when we're looking at provision of toilets, why don't we look at all sorts of things? You could have a multi-purpose toilet. Why do we sort of segregate? In other places, you've got male, female, the whole lot combined. This sort of thinking. Interesting one that, where is it? Lockerbie, miles away. Fantastic toilets, fantastic. With an attendant Great. And you paid to go in, okay? You paid, but you had a superb facility that was supervised there, and it was a credit to that area. Many years ago, that is. And just round the corner, there was one that was the responsibility, I don't know if it was the public or whatever, but it was one that was free. Okay, there's your option. You go to the one with the pretty floral arrangement, and you pay, or you use the toilet at the back that is not quite so salubrious. You know, perhaps we've got to start thinking very differently. And the construction of our toilets as well. Look at something that Torfine has built. Their toilets at the bus depot in Cumbran don't require internal lighting because they've been built with glass bricks. It's not a bad facility. It's not fantastic, but it's a better design than what we're thinking, because I would really like to see, and I think the Caldecott members as well, what design is proposed for Caldecott toilets, because to try and renovate what's there in Caldecott, I don't think it's worth the effort. Do a new decent build with a good design, not try to muddle through everything that's there. But that's just my thinking.
The ones in Caldecott are being worked on now. It'll be completed by the end of this month. The roof has been done, the guttering has been done. It's a case now of making the inside more up to date than what it was.
A bit more prettier.
Bit more pretty, yeah. That should be completed.
Can we then just run through the list then on page 105, Appendix 1 then?
Before you move on, could I ask a question to Rob? I sort of diverted. MCC supports community and town councils that provide public conveniences by an annual grant. To support any further transfers, officers have suggested the grant continue to be paid for a further 3 years after the current approval expires. What does that mean?
Stops.
I know it stops, but what does it mean?
Expand on that, Robin.
At the moment, we currently pay a grant to 5 different town councils for different facilities that are available. Within the wider context of the proposals that Roger was looking at, and you yourselves have touched upon this, is to consider all different options about how we facilitate the provision of a wider service without necessarily having recourse to the full range of in-house provided facilities that we have. On the basis that there is a strategic provision across the county which may be made up of a residual number of facilities we retain, those that we are able to transfer in a suitable condition to respective town councils. And later on in the report, Chair, it does refer to the possibility of utilising existing public buildings where that is appropriate, where they're DDA compliant and would be practical for public use, whether that be one-stop shops, libraries and other public buildings, and also to explore the option as to what extent it is realistic to engage with businesses within local town areas to see whether or not those facilities can be available. Rob rightly referred to the Welsh Government scheme, which came to an end at the end of the previous financial year, where money would be available to public houses and other businesses to promote the fact that their facilities were fit for purpose and available. That was a scheme, as Rob says, that the Welsh Government brought to an end a year ago. And one potential strands to a strategy that you may wish to consider is that we, as an authority, initiate something where in certain strategic locations where there is a particular need and there are certain business facilities that might be suitable for that purpose, that could be a strand of an overall strategy which includes those of our public buildings that are in the right location and are fit for purpose. Also the retention of a small number of facilities by the authority, but also where possible to transfer facilities in good order to appropriate town councils. It does refer in the report to the fact...
That's not what I asked. The question wasn't that. The question was to support any further transfers, officers would suggest that the grant continue to, that's a £1,200 grant, for a further 3 years after the current approval expires. When would the current approval begin?
It's already in place, Councillor Eason.
So when would it expire?
I think, is it 2016, 2017 financial year?
Correct,
And
Chair.
what we're asking for here now is take your toilets on, we'll keep that grant going. And that grant, though, I'm led to believe, will be still available for the others who took them on at the early days. That's what happened with the last time, if I remember rightly.
So we've got a better deal in Caldecott, we've taken a lump sum to clear it all off.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Going back then to these toilets. let's just go through them on the appendix of them, because I think it's important that we as a committee, if we feel that we should put some recommendations forward, that's our job. So let's start with White Horse Lane. Are we happy with White Horse Lane to have the partnership that we discuss in retaining White Horse Lane in partnership with other bodies, and if that partnership agreement does not happen, we dispose of them?
Because of the commitment there in terms of the capital outlay to bring that facility up to fit for purpose, I think it's one of those within Abergavenny that could be considered for closure. Clearly, we've got issues to overcome in terms of provision, which we have to explore with the details that Rob's just alluded to with businesses and other public buildings. But that requires in the region of £110,000, albeit there may be some alternative arrangements that can be made to make that a more efficient capital investment. But it's something that we probably believe at this stage may be more beneficial to close.
Right, Val.
Yeah, you've got a development coming ahead, well, sometime, of the old market site in Abergavenny. And that must see the provision, whatever's developed there, there's got to be some provision of public loos in that development, that supermarket or whatever we see on that site. And can I just, before, I know the Chairman of Planning's got to go quite soon, I think that all planning applications that deal with retail, of a certain size perhaps, should provide public facilities.
Yes.
I'm surprised the number that don't have those facilities, and it's not a bad thing for business actually, because
Well, it creates a good deal of footfall.
it does,
Yeah.
yes. Not so good through your little boutique, but
No.
through your bigger premises, yes, you usually pick something up on the way out.
But let's just go back to that one.
Yeah.
What we're saying is we're talking about 110k
Capital investment.
capital investment to bring them up to a standard,
Yes.
to then hand over to the town council to run them. Is that what we're saying?
Well, that's what it would take to bring those up to a standard. So if we were to adopt that strategy that we perhaps used in other facilities where we do modest investment up to date and then allow the community or town council to take on and run the responsibility, that doesn't work so well with this particular facility because of the sheer magnitude of that capital investment. Clearly, it's unaffordable.
I was always under the impression, though, that the town council were willing to put some funding in to retain them toilets in partnership with the authority. So an example is, if we found 55 grand and the town council said, we'll put 55 grand in, and they're our toilets, to retain the toilets, would that be a possibility of working, or are the town council adamant they don't want to take them on?
I think they've mentioned an interest in that direction, clearly. The sheer magnitude of the investment, I think, is a bit prohibitive from their perspective and ours. And it's something that we struggle to jointly fund in terms of capital outlay.
Okay. Right. So as a select committee, are we happy? Sorry, Ruth.
Well, obviously the development will go ahead, all things going according to plan in
Did you watch the news this morning?
Yes, I did.
No.
I did, Chair. That, you know, you have 106 monies. Could that not even be contributing to something, you know, in Abergavenny to, you know, I mean, that's a possibility, considering the size of the development.
If the toilets matter to Abergavenny, that's my feeling, they matter to Kevin and residents from Gov Island. If them toilets matter to people and matter to the town council, let's get them resolved. Don't leave them as they are, because all they're doing is chewing away 20 odd grand a year it's costing us to just go in there. It's either close them for me or work out a deal to keep them open. If nobody wants to talk, close them.
Yeah.
Job's done.
I think that's where we're at, really. You know, we've had this discussion protracted for some time. And it's reaching that stage where due to capital and revenue budget pressures, we have to make a decision to close it. Preferably come to some better solution, if possible, but the sheer size of the investment required to make those toilets fit for purpose, it doesn't lend itself to supporting modest capital investment now for the community council to be willing to take on the long-term responsibility. Okay.
Councillor Street?
Can we just, as part of that, for the officers to do, if there's a decision made to close those toilets, that there's a clear sign on the side that facilities available at the Wetherspoon. Because there is no indication, you're quite right about that.
I think before we went to the stage of having to get to the closure, clearly we're going to have to put some amount of work in here to try and facilitate the next best solution. And so that would be an engagement with businesses, Welsh Government about potential access to funds, albeit it doesn't seem available at the moment. Lots of discussion to try and find the next best solution. And clearly, if we got down to the point of closure, we'd have to make sure that people were aware of the alternatives.
I'm surprised that nobody in Red Square makes that provision.
Yeah, thank you. You're taking about £6,500 worth of water, electricity and rates from those buildings. Would it not be viable to freeze or not take any more rates from those properties for the next 5 years to mitigate any cost that some people have to pay, to reduce the total cost of having to refurbish those toilets? They are important. I got fond memories of it from another matter, but they were there. They were important the day I needed them. £110,000, is that a true figure? Is it overblown? Is it could be less? I think there should be some consultation with Abergavenny Town Council before you close them, as to see what way can we move forward on these. Equally, if Gilwan feel that they need those toilets when they come to Abergavenny, that the Brynacum area could look at some form of helping funding. To close those toilets, I think, just like that, I think would be wrong. But I think that if we can find some way of mitigating that cost by not taking rates or things like that for a number of years, to try and reduce, to balance them out, in other words.
If I may, Chair. During the course of the autumn, Roger organised extensive consultation with all town councils regarding these particular facilities, and we've had very fruitful discussions with both Caldicot and Chepstow, and that's resulted in the work that's now taking place with the aim towards effective transfer for the 1st of April. Because a significant proportion of the work we're talking about at the moment is focused on Abergavenny Town Council, although we've had detailed discussions with them, there have been no proposals coming back from the Town Council in terms of what sites they would be prepared to engage in a transfer. Rob rightly makes the comment that irrespective of the difficulties we would have in meeting our share of the cost of refurbishment of White Horse Lane, they've already indicated that that is something that would be problematic for them, albeit that would be their preferred site because of the footfall for that particular facility. And whilst the other facilities that are available in Abergavenny would require significantly less work to restore them to an appropriate condition, we're in the position where, even though we've embarked on that engagement with them, they haven't come back and expressed an interest. And I think part of Roger's viewpoint of this was, if it is from an authority perspective, there are a range of different options that could be deployed to ensure there was appropriate provision within these communities. That doesn't necessarily involve the continued provision of the existing resources that we fund, and it may be that if we don't feel that there is an opportunity to work collaboratively in terms of either restoring and transferring certain facilities, then we cannot necessarily guarantee the continuation of those facilities. So we have actively engaged with them to that effect.
Is there a commercial value to the site?
Yes, there would be a receipt.
Right, so can we look at the potential commercial value of that site, of flogging off to whoever, and provide an alternative set of toilets in the car park further on? Yeah. If there's profit to be made for them, let's flog them off and put some toilets, these stainless steel things you get in various places, in the car park at the end of is it Lion Street?
I think that's the right approach, really. I mean, at the end of the day, this will come down to the figures and the business case and the balance sheet at the bottom. And if you can make some money in reprovision cheaper and more effectively, both capital and revenue budgets being saved, then I suppose that's your solution. I think it's the fact that we may gain a receipt is probably going to be modest. Reprovisioning is probably going to be still quite expensive. I think by the time you juggle those figures around, you'll still be in a situation where you've probably got a little bit of liability that you can't afford to continue. But
you might have more help from Abergavenny Town Council.
perhaps, yes. And so I think at this stage, nothing's out of being a potential solution to this problem. And there's lots of scenarios that we could be looking at. But the bottom line is that we can't afford to run these facilities any longer, and we can't afford the investment in providing fit for purpose for somebody else to take on in many cases. Okay.
I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up and get to the hard one then.
No, very simple, very briefly. If there is a real estate value for these things, which can play into some sort of deal, shouldn't there be an indication in the information that comes out to us? Some of us don't know the toilets as well as others. You know, shouldn't there not be something that indicates that there might be, because of the real estate value, there might be the opportunity to do something else, indicate that there is possibly another option, just, yes.
I think we'll do a further piece of work following this meeting to bring in on any potential receipts to give us a full picture of the financial situation.
Right. Let's start at the bottom then. Tinton Car Park, MCC responsible, transfer to Tinton CC. No, is that one by the station there?
Again, Chair.
By the Abbey, is it?
Yes, that's correct.
Right, okay. So, reference to transfer discussions taking place?
I don't think they're underway yet, but that would be the recommendation.
Okay, we've got no costs on that, though.
Chair,
I
Yeah.
bring members up to date on that. Looking across, the water rates for that are currently £1,740. Electricity is £950. Cleaning currently costs £16,245.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Maintenance, our estimated cost regarding maintenance is £6,000, and that would give you a total figure of £24,955.
Could we, have you approached CADU on this matter, because it's the car park, it's their car park, sorry, it's next to the car park, which is their car park. It would improve their lot if the toilets were there, and if they could chip in, could they be listed, these toilets, and you can own the buggers?
We realised that there was obviously an involvement there with CADU, and we need to have some discussions with them, because clearly it's a massive benefit from their perspective to use toilets there.
When you look at the cleaning costs, it seems, I know why they're so high, is because you've got a guy going around in a van, and it's the same in Caldecott. You can reduce those costs by having your own concerns. And equally in Tinton, by the station, there's a collaborative arrangement with the pub and CADU and the shops in terms of paying for car parking, which if you spend money in shops you can get back. But there's a revenue stream there which if they took over between themselves, Tinton Council, the pub, the CADU, it could take them off our hands at a lot less cost.
Yeah. Going back to the point that was made earlier about, for some facilities, this would be a real opportunity in terms of generating extra footfall and business. Seems like a place that maybe could take advantage of that. So I think, rather than just a straight transfer, which might not be palatable to the community council, there's probably other solutions within Tinton that could be utilised.
Sorry, I'm just wondering if Councillor Webb has spoken to you about it, because I think she's had ongoing discussions with these toilets, hasn't she? I believe she's had different meetings there about the toilets, so I think she should be had some sort of communication to her about the cost and so on.
I'm sure Roger would be
yeah.
with those discussions.
You've got a couple of Portaloos there, perhaps. Quarter of that price. Yeah.
Those are in a really good state of repair. They used to be difficult to get up into.
Val, I need to push on this. But
Yes,
I think
you do.
What we need is some recommendations.
Yeah.
With
And,
Tinton one, are we happy to let
The
progress
Tinton one, you've raised something in my mind, that was something that Anne and I were hoping to go through with CADU, because that's an integral part of that building next door. It's not appropriate to try and hand it over either. It's upstairs, downstairs. It's not fit for purpose. CADU have got a very good set of toilets within the Abbey, but you can't access them. But it needs sorting out. And thanks, Ruth, because I've forgotten that. Right. That's another issue that needs following through, Chair.
Right, can you take that on board, that caveat?
Yeah, sure. Is that a general?
Who's back in
Yeah.
touch?
Yeah, I think that's general consensus from us as committee. Toilets, CADU have got toilets.
CADU is the answer potentially with this one,
Yeah. Okay. TIC Chepstow, David, that's yours. I've been to these as well. Quite small running cost, but
This is in the process of being transferred.
So we're okay with that one, yeah?
We're okay with that, yeah?
Yeah.
Can I ask, Chairman, while we're doing this, what is happening to the rest of the information centre there? Does it still function,
The building.
the TIC?
Yes.
Are we maximising our income on that building, or we still got the front room empty? Why no initiative there?
Yeah, I could take that one back to our estates colleagues.
Because the question was asked at audit, we have no income generating strategy. One's coming forward to the Cabinet in a couple of months, that's kicked that into life. But you've got an asset there that should be making money for us.
Well, it's definitely a key strategy of the authorities NTFP over the next 3 years, income generation and rationalisation of assets that are not pulling their weight, so that'll definitely get sorted out.
For those audit office and their recommendations throughout was to have that strategy in place, I think, wasn't it? David?
Perhaps I can shed a little light on that.
No, we don't need that, David. On this one here?
Yeah, on this, well, the question came up as part of it, because it's all part of the building. The issue with that building is we are limited in what we can do with it because of the agreement lease with the estate that owns the area. That property is let to us on a peppercorn rent on the basis that it is there as a facility, not to make money, retail money. It is there as a facility, so it provides just information and that sort of thing for the travelling public. If you wanted to open it as, say, a coffee shop, I think you'd be in problem with the lessee.
This is something that was brought forward 20 years ago, and we ran away from it because of the objections from local businesses, but you have nobody at the moment providing that cup of coffee. So
that is not true.
Let's move then to the Calney Cotton Chepstow one. They seem to be in progress, yeah? That's great, yeah? Happy with them too, yeah?
Both in progress.
The US one, transfer to us Town Council, big question mark. Discussions on progress on that? No?
Maryport Street?
Yeah.
Maryport Street, yes. Transfer to TC. Discussions untended. Discussions underway, Rob?
There have, Chair, been some discussion, but again, as with the Abergavenny situation, it hasn't translated into some tangible agreements about actual transfer.
Yeah, it just seems to me, though, we get part way and then we back away from it, don't we? Whereas the original proposals were, take them on and we close them,
yeah.
And that were it straightforward. And that's the problem, we've got to show a little bit more
assertive.
Yeah.
Just take that point of view, actually.
Yeah.
If you can't take them on, unfortunately,
they'll have to go. Okay, so we're us. Cattle market, we've had a discussion about that. That's the same as Town Council, isn't it?
Yeah, retain until 16-17, but then transfer afterwards.
So they granted another 12 months, it was 2 years really. Agincourt Street, funded by Monmouth Town Council, that's okay, right? With to Abergavenny. Could we do with
Can I please ask?
What's that?
With Agincourt Street, when you say transferring, that's the total thing. So if I know where it is. If I know where they all are. If they sold that property, would we benefit as a Monmouthshire County Council from a capital asset?
Yeah, there'll be some element.
There will be a clawback
Yeah,
because, again, it would be good to see a better provision in a more appropriate place.
Within the transfers, there is the value of pound, which will be the council's value will come to them, retaining asset in that respect.
Are we more than happy with that part of the document? Our problem is the top end of the document, I think, isn't it?
Section.
Yeah. Could we have a report back, perhaps, on the Abergavenny section? Back to committee here, because there's some real nitty ones in there.
Yes.
Yeah, with a detail of capital receipts as well. Yeah.
Most
Are we happy with that? We'll come back just on the Abergavenny ones, yes? Because it's the future of these toilets in Abergavenny. The other ones seem to be getting there. We don't seem to be making any progress on the Abergavenny ones, and there's a massive capital investment required there. Going back to going back then, just quickly, going back to the whole place plan, going back to the decision of full council, going back to the cattle market site now not going to have the new library, going back to the toilets which were in the marketplace, remember? We had toilets in there, didn't we? Which would cost us a fortune. Are they still there?
We still have those toilets within the market. They haven't had any improvement, have they,
Who
gentlemen?
runs them? Who owns them? Who's
Staff
market
use them.
staff?
It won't be run by the market staff now, because they won't be, no, I'm
Run
not sure.
some market stuff.
Cool.
There's no market staff there now, we'll get clarification.
Can we find out where the two toilets, who's paying for them two in the market hall?
They're there. They're still there.
Still there.
I always regret the building of the brewery yard toilets where they were. You go out to the back door, the first thing you see is bang in your eye, public loos, and they should have been built to serve the market as well, adjacent.
Tony?
Yeah, before you wrap this up, Appendix 2, Caldicot Castle toilets, they're not mentioned, other than the fact that you've got a capital cost to spend on them. What is your plans for the future of those? Appendix 2, Caldicot Castle.
I think, Chair, that's something that overlaps with another strategy in terms of what's happening in terms of the leisure environment, and it's tied up with it, and perhaps the appropriate course of action would be for us to tie in with them in terms of what's happening in terms of the future development of the castle, because that would have implications. It would be wrong for us to undertake any course of action in isolation without actually doing some joined-up thinking.
It is integral.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So who's picking the bill up for Caldicot Castle then? Is that part of the economic development or the castle itself?
It's certainly not picked up as part of this particular budget.
So you're not going to
So I think it would probably come as a castle budget.
Okay. All right. Everybody happy with that? A report back on Abergavenny and the market one. We need to find out where they've disappeared.
And also, could we also jog the Welsh Assembly, sorry about this, toilets on the A449, they're not our responsibility, gentlemen. We have a cleansing contract with it. They're in a deplorable condition. Letter's gone from the Assembly member. Apparently, Welsh Government are reviewing all their facilities over Wales, but if we could give them a nudge, because the assumption is they're part of Monmouth, and they don't reflect well on us.
And the other thing is, could we request Ben Winstanley to come to us and give us a full oversight of Raglan toilets?
Yes.
Yeah?
We'll do that.
I think that'd be Benny's asset management.
Yes, as Ben's asset manager, so I'll ask Ben.
Yeah, we need to be clear as
Yeah.
to how that decision was made.
Yeah.
It's not a good one.
And there was one more as well. The ones in Usk by the car park here, you asked for some information, Woodside, just the running costs of what it's costing us.
And also, how that system's operated, because if it's operating...
It might be an effective system that we could implement also,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, members happy with that? David, last one, quickly.
Could we make a general point about the disposal of county council assets? Because very often they're disposed of, and you see the person who has bought them develop a significant profit out of them. In planning, you see this. I mean this place in Chepstow at the moment where the sale of the thing, there is an entrepreneur, if you like, has got hold of it. It is something that we shouldn't lose. We shouldn't just sell it with the idea that's it, it's done
There's a
and
strategy
dusted.
we have as a council, disposal of assets. It must be part of the strategy.
Well,
There is a strategy in place, yeah.
well, is it being used?
We've had
That's
it here,
question.
We did have it before the select committee.
Yeah, well, I just asked the question because I've had we've sold some stuff. One in Chepstow that I'm really looking at the moment as it develops. And that person not only is going to get a dwelling out of it, he's going to get two properties for sale within it.
We are exploring the opportunities of taking any development benefits
somebody in the graveyard shift on the finance report.
That's all right. We're all warmed up now. There you go.
If this is a graveyard, what is it podcast? Cadavers or something.
We're okay, we're going to... Right, Mark.
Go for it.
Go forward. Some great numbers. Agenda item number 6, number 1, capital budget monitoring month 9.
For the purpose of the cameras, my name is Mark Howcroft. I'm the Assistant Head of Finance. I'd refer you to the capital report, page 27 in your bundle. Paragraph 2.2 explains the summary position in relation to the capital programme for the year. Just pull that up myself. Okay. Which, as of month 9, against a revised budget of 16.1 million, the spend at month 9 was 8.2 million, with a forecast spend of a further 7.7 million in the last 3 months of the financial year, to derive an underspend of 187,000. That 187,000 isn't one that we can readily utilise because it's predominantly the cause of a highways grant where the funding will go back as a consequence. Yeah. You'll note that probably a theme to my reporting on the capital programme is a concern about the level of spend against the annual budget, and that actually has meant that at month 9 I'm reported a recommendation to Cabinet that looks more zealously at the level of slippages going forward, and that as a consequence of 9.1 million that the service managers identified needs to be slipped into 15-16. I actually did an examination of those that have indicated any great activity through the year, whether the level of slippage from previous years was more so than the level of spend this year, to actually see whether there's any refinements that could be made to those budgets down to a more realistic level. As a consequence of which, I recommended to Cabinet that they deprioritise schemes totalling £771,000 worth. That doesn't mean that those schemes no longer exist. What it means is that you may remember that Cabinet took a decision that for anything to appear in the capital programme, it either needed to pay for itself in future, in other words, be able to afford its own borrowing, or it needed to displace something already in the capital programme. So this consideration of reviewing what we historically have done and has been a feature of the capital programme historically seems a timely one to allow them headroom to consider any schemes going forward, whether it be those schemes that haven't progressed, that then need to be reviewed and refined and brought back to that Cabinet for approval to be reinstigated into the capital programme. I think it's a useful discipline for service managers to appreciate there's no automatic right to slippage, and that actually people need to spend the resources granted to them by the council in a timely fashion. There are any number of laudable reasons why certain projects haven't progressed, whether it be planning implications, whether it be agreement with interested parties, etc. It seems sensible to me that we actually just look at those resources that are allocated to that and say, well, actually solve the impediment to those schemes, and if it's still a priority to the council to address, bring it back in a future programme.
Can I just make one comment on 2.4? I've got a number of 770,000, or 771. I was looking at some figures.
Did you say you had a figure of 770,000?
Yes.
Yeah, so what is it? A rounding of 1,000, yeah. But the reality is that those figures that I've proposed to Cabinet are based on service managers still spending £7.7 million in the last 3 months of this financial year. So I actually think the slippage will be different than what has been purported at month 9. I think we will need to do this exercise again at outturn. And actually putting it to Cabinet as early as I have done is just put a marker there and drawn a line in the sand to explain to service managers that actually they need to be progressing some of these schemes and showing some evidence of activity in them if they want to generate automatic slippage.
So what we're saying, Mark, is the criteria we have for slippage, you're not happy with it, and we're looking for some kind of different format to be accountable to their managers for that slippage. And if that is not the case, then we're looking at removing that from the programme.
Yeah, I mean, there's two dimensions to it. Sometimes I think schemes get into the capital programme before they're actually quantified and established to any extent, and then we spend a lot of time reporting a variance and no spend against it when actually the scheme ought to be more robust in the first place. There are also considerations that actually I think it's useful managers to appreciate a time-limited opportunity with these things. Capital schemes, by definition, will tend to take a longer period than revenue schemes. But actually just the presumption to slip money across in terms of years without doing any sort of review or whether it's necessary doesn't seem the right one to make in the current climate.
Would you have a benchmark for that then? Would you be looking at a benchmark, any schemes over, let's say, up to 500k, or would you be looking at all schemes within the capital programme?
I'd be tempted to look at all schemes to be consistent. And my stance in Appendix A was to look at those schemes where there was no evidence of any spend, where the service manager suggests there was significant impediment that was going to mean that they weren't going to spend by the end of this financial year, or where the budget was of an annual nature and actually the slippage rolling forward was more than the actual activity incurred in a year.
David, is that you? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think the points that Mark makes are right. I think that these schemes should be very much more robust before they're put in front of us. They're not being so can lead to two things. It can lead to delay in them being implemented, which isn't a good thing, and that can bring about extra costs, I suppose, in some ways. And the other thing, it can't be good for budgeting if the figures are not as firm as they could be. The only other thing, it's me, is in 2.3. What is ESR? I've been sat here thinking about it, but I'm afraid it doesn't ring any bells in my belfry. What is ESR?
It's actually a disabled adaptations and access to schools money. I think it was a specific initiative that we've had for a number of years.
So what is it? ESR?
Yeah, what is it? Still.
I grasped that one, access for all, drop curves and projects, but ESR?
I can't think what the actual acronym is because it actually appears as a narrative in the budget as that. But I will find out and go back to you.
I will remember you sat there with that look on your face saying, "Oh God."
So could we ask somebody to, instead of putting the SR in there, could we have a better phrase as what it is? Or
I mean, just to put some of this in context, there are some very good schemes that are managed well. And I'm not trying to tar everyone with the same brush. I'm trying to impose the same sort of discipline upon
you do
all.
that in Appendix 1.
Yeah.
You've covered it there, which gives credit where it's due, and otherwise not.
But to just give you an explanation, we have for a number of years, and it's been of interest to this committee, a number of IT schemes, things like the CRM, the document management aspect. That budget's probably been in the capital programme to the same level for the last 5 or 6 years. The technology has changed, the solutions have likely changed, and probably the costs are changing. So if we actually instigate CRM, it is unlikely or inappropriate to actually measure the cost of that against a budget which was set against technology 4 or 5 years ago. So what I'm suggesting in that case is we put that money back to the IT reserve. We give the IT project board the approval to bring or commend schemes to Cabinet in a timely fashion, and we progress them in a timely fashion.
That was 195,000, yeah.
Can I just ask a few questions? I think I personally would recommend that is the way forward with the capital. The slippage is really out of hand, really. That's the wrong word. The slippage that we do have is needs to be considered a lot more as a priority than leaving as we do, is just keep slipping it over. Because my question is, one which has just come to light, is the Usk Rugby Club 106. Am I right in saying that? That has been going on for years, hasn't it? The relocation of... But then I don't see anything in any documents to say what is happening with that one. And that's just one example. Crossaning Park, Red Row Homes, that development was built years ago. But I see in the report here, we've still got some 106 recreation Croissant. What is that this all-weather football pitch and it's not happening and then it happens and then it doesn't happen? Is that the complications that we have and you have in all this?
In my first draft, I'd also included the decommitment to section 106. I think more pragmatically, as I'm writing the report, I recognise that there's been a certain amount of activity in terms of engagement that's been going on that meant actually taking those resources away and bringing them back again probably wouldn't be sensible. But section 106 has its own challenges, is that sometimes it's only part funding or it requires the community to actually match it. And that's why I talk about sometimes things get into the capital programme at a far earlier stage and I think it is a robust scheme. Having spoken to the officers that are involved in section 106, they can see a sense in this discipline because it will actually help them get engagement, it will help them get agreement with people because once the thing is in the capital programme, effectively the foot is taken off the gas. Whereas if actually they say, well actually before it gets into the capital programme we need to understand where you're getting these resources from, we need to understand what scheme is agreeable to all, it just focuses the mind on getting a more timely solution.
Can I just go back then to page 38? It's quite...
I'm only on page 30.
Oh, I've moved on. I want to... We've got section 106, Croissant and infant side, and then we've got section 106, recreation Croissant. And I know there are different abbreviations for section 106. Yeah? I know you can have section 106 on section 106 on education, you can have section 106 on adult recreation. Why do we have two headings for that? Is that because of exactly that? Do we have a 106 agreement on a need basis on local facilities for highways or anything? That I'm just trying to get in my head why isn't things put together? Why they split up? Is that the reason?
My understanding is that they relate to specific projects or earmarked resources for different things. So you've got two aspects in there in terms of Croissant. I don't know the details of what those projects are, but the fact that they're separate suggests to me that they are two different schemes.
So we've got £63,000 in Croissant sitting there, and we might have two schemes on the table. Is that what we're saying? Yeah. Okay. Any more questions?
Can you clarify for me, bottom of page 30, there's that money that had to go back to Welsh Assembly. £207,000, well, net underspend of 168.
We'll have to go downstairs.
An abortive highway scheme, I mean, it's not fair to really ask you that. But it seems regrettable we've returned that much money when the highways are in such a deplorable condition.
It does, and having done the checks, I'm assured that officers have had the necessary conversations with WG to see whether we could actually morph it into a different scheme that would be acceptable to them. But the conditions on the application were such that it was a requirement to do work in a particular locality that isn't felt to be pragmatic. So we don't incur the spend, but B, we don't get the opportunity to use the grant.
It's worth bearing in mind as well, Chairman, I believe that if 106 monies coming from a development are not witnessed as being taken up within a certain period, the developer can ask them to be returned. I mean, I'm on the edge of one of those things myself at the moment through no fault of my own, might I add, but you have to bear in mind, you have to turn a sod, if you like, to ensure that the monies don't get taken from him, taken back by the
Yeah, that's correct. I noticed there's one in here for Monmouth as well, isn't there? And I know they've had a little couple of issues arise in Monmouth, 106s, haven't they? With this, some water problems or something on this skate track or something. So, yeah, I think because the legal agreements, the 106, you've got a proven need that money is required, and then if you haven't spent it after so many years, there's no proven need, and the developers actually can ask for it back, and legally you've got to give them back.
Exactly the point. Exactly the point.
Can
That's actually right. But what I'm trying to do is to actually introduce a greater discipline in considering what's been done to allow projects to take off at a far earlier juncture than they seem to.
Okay. Val?
Yes, please. You know, I'm always whinging on about that original figure that we said in the budget. So I presume that's the annual forecast. That's the
annual forecast is the actual the spend that we predict between now and the end of the financial year.
So I've still not got my original figure.
You haven't as of yet.
But I'm working on it. I would have to, because I honestly find it difficult to relate to things if I don't know the original figure that was estimated for building the toilets, if you like, in Brewery Yard or wherever, and what we actually ended up spending on that setup. So I would appreciate those when they come, Chairman. Thanks.
Members?
Could I refer you to the supporting paper that you had by email? The actual supporting paper shows all those figures. So it shows the slippage brought forward from last year. That came last week by email to all members because I recognised that the capital monitoring information was month 6 information. It was pulling back an incorrect link.
I know, yes,
Yep.
sorry, yes, I remember. Yes,
But the detail of that shows both the slippage from an earlier year, the budget that's been commended by council in the current year, and gives you the combined effect. So,
Members, I'm going to have to adjourn the meeting. Our room has been double booked, and we have to move from here, and we're going to go to Steve Greenslade room.
I think it's available, yes.
Okay, are you okay, members, just to adjourn at the moment, and we have to go to Steve's room? I've just been informed, all right?
Do we get coffee down there?
I'm sure you can have a coffee. I will reconvene at 20 to 1, so we've got 10 minutes, okay?
How many times does this happen, Chairman?
I don't know, there's a lot happening, isn't
Yeah, why not use
there?
it?
Get on with it, yeah, if you want.
We-
Won't be long.
I say, why can't we use the Conservative room?
Right.
Dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, Kelly's here about 14 times.
Was it 4?
Yeah, it's just people that that's it. I was
Righty ho.
Like,
Yeah, I better do that. Better.
it's got a spinny top on it. Well, it was a hole in it. Well, I was more concerned about a heel.
This is...
But I won't deny that.
That's the first time it's from the town. First time it's been through the room.
Oh,
I closed that hole up.
You're still animated, aren't you? You just need me, listen to us.
Because it's only Sarah that's got a couple of slides.
Yeah.
It's bloody shutting down now. Oh, do you want to try yours in there, Abby? Do you want to try your laptop instead? Only because this is shutting down.
won't be in this meeting, so